You're listening to the Third Down Squad podcast, the best international news podcast for the National Football League. We're your hosts, Derek, Josh, and Toby. Let's get you ready for a new set of downs on Sunday.
What's going on, everybody? Derek here, and welcome back to the Third Down Squad podcast. It is now week 2, the divisional playoff round for the NFL. Great couple games this last weekend, which we will get into here shortly. And we have a bunch of really good games coming up this week as well. As always, I'm Derek on the left. That's Josh in the middle. Toby's on the right. And now let's get started, as usual, with our weekly recap. Toby, we're going to start with you. What do you have to say about last week's games?
Well, I'm going to go in order here and going to start off with the Colts game against the Texans there. And, I mean, I expected the Colts to win that game, but, I mean, they were dominating there. I kind of switched off the game after the first half because it was just so obvious that the Colts would win. I barely watched the game anymore, but holy cow, the Colts look dominant. It feels like for me, the Colts are the best team in the AFC, if not the league right now. And if you're looking at the odds for FPI, Derek and I have talked about this before we started recording this podcast, but the Colts are the least favorite to win the NFL or the Super Bowl from all the 8 teams that still remain in there. I think their chances are at 7% to win the Super Bowl, but I mean, why? If you're looking at the last couple of games, they are at least in the top 3 teams right now remaining in the playoffs. So, but I mean, we're gonna see this week, but we're coming to that later. And then, of course, we got the Seattle-Dallas game there. And, I mean, it sucks for Seattle with Janikowski going out on the first kick there. But, I mean, I don't know if you noticed that, guys, but when he kicked that, I think it was a 53-yarder. He wasn't warming up for that kick. He was just standing around next to Pete Carroll on the sideline. He didn't do any practice kicks in the net or anything. He just went out there and kicked a 53-yarder. And, I mean, every kid learns that before you're going out on the field, you're warming up for something to do. Otherwise, you pull a muscle or something. And
especially when you're that size.
Yeah.
When you're that size of a kicker, it matters.
Yeah, he doesn't really look that athletic, so...
Yeah, he's really not.
I mean...
Well, he's like the second oldest kicker.
Yeah. So, yeah. Take that as an example, kids, and warm up before you get on the field there. And I think that actually was the reason that the Cowboys won that game, and Seattle fell short by 2 points.
Educational lesson by Toby.
Yeah.
I would like to add into something into the educational lesson. Kids,
Sure.
please remember how to punt the ball. Don't let the ball hit the ground and then kick it. It's just going to end up going right to the team.
What that was. That was really funny, honestly.
I mean, that's a drop kick. That's for the rugby players. That's the way that they kick. So he's never kicked off the ground before. He's never done a regular field goal or kickoff. So, I mean, if he's comfortable with it, but, I mean, how are you going to do an onside kick with that? That's never going to work. And,
I mean, to be completely honest, that onside kick that he had, I mean, it was actually a decent kick, but, I mean, it unfortunately went into Dallas, but.
Yeah, I mean, that way. But, yeah, that's the Seattle game there. But, yeah, the next game, the Chargers against Baltimore, and we've talked about this. We had that game a couple of weeks ago in the regular season, and Baltimore was dominating the game, and the Chargers head coach came out and said, okay, it was his fault. He didn't really game plan that well against Baltimore. He did some wrong planning for how they played. And this time, they didn't play with any linebackers at all. They just put safeties in there. I think the league average is 3% of all snaps in the entire season are played with 7 defensive backs. And in that game, the Chargers played 98% of defensive snaps with 7 defensive backs in there. So, I mean, it worked at the end. I mean, Baltimore didn't get the ball going at all. And I think I said it in the last episode in the predictions that I'm picking the experience of Phillip Rivers over the inexperience and the nervousness of Lamar Jackson at quarterback. And, of course, the kind of defense that the Chargers played against Baltimore last week didn't help the nervousness of Lamar Jackson at all. And you could see that. And, I mean, at some point in the game, the fans were actually shouting for Joe Flacco to get in the game and for John Harbaugh to pull Lamar Jackson, your future franchise quarterback, out of the game, which is kind of crazy for me.
Yeah, because if you pull him out, then he's not your guy.
Yeah, I mean, he had 40 passing yards going into the fourth quarter. I mean, it was a really bad performance for 3 quarters of that game.
Yeah, it was a really bad performance, but it was his first playoff game against one of the best defenses in the game right now.
Yeah.
And
all right, Josh, what else do you?
Yeah, Josh.
Toby, do you have anything else to add to that?
No, I don't have anything. I think Josh is going to talk about the same thing I was going to talk about in the last game.
I know where you're going, Toby. Cody Parkey.
Yes.
Cody Parkey. Wow, I'm surprised that guy didn't leave Chicago the minute that game was over. I mean, sure, it was changed to a tip ball, but still, you gotta. This is your moment. Like you said on Good Morning America, Cody Parkey, you said you'll live for this moment. And you made 3 out of 3 before. And when it came to the most important field goal of the night, it gets tipped. And next thing you know, you're just like the dude that caught that ball from the Chicago Cubs that got blacklisted from the city of Chicago until they won their World Series.
Mm-hmm.
I think if he misses more kicks in next season, he's gone. He's gone.
I don't even think he's going to see next season.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. But all in all, though, that Bears-Eagles game was pretty much the most exciting game out of the 4 wild card games. I think second place would be the Cowboys and Seahawks because it came close.
Mm-hmm.
But this is also going to open up a lot of opportunities saying, do we keep Carson Wentz or do we trade Nick Foles? And this has been pretty much the debate ever since Nick Foles came in. But aside from that, we'll deal with that some other time. But all in all, that the Bears defense did enough, but it was more of the Bears offense that didn't do anything for them to help out. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can't win it on defense alone because at least when the Seahawks won Super Bowl 48, they at least had an offense to help gosh, I can't think of the word right now. Compliment them. Yeah. Because they would keep the ball long enough that their defense could get rested. And that's how their defense was so dominant because they just contemplated each other. I mean, complimented. Yeah, I can't think. Anyway, my opinion on Chargers and Ravens. I know I said I wanted the Ravens to win, but you got to give the Chargers a lot of credit. They hunted Lamar Jackson down like a cheetah and an antelope. I am not kidding you. There was always somebody chasing him down, and he could not do anything to stop it. And you could rely on the Chargers offense because Phillip Rivers is just as methodical as any other quarterback out there.
Yeah.
And if he sees a guy open, he's going to throw it to the guy open, no questions asked. And with Melvin Gordon coming back, they got a better run game now. So I think the Chargers have a pretty decent chance of making it the championship game, but we'll discuss that later.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll try to rapid fire this one because I heard Toby's thing, but the Cowboys and Seahawks, I kind of fell asleep against that one. I woke up late just to see Janikowski pull his quad. Was it his quad?
Or I think it was something I think it was his quad. It was behind him. Yeah. So it was definitely his quad.
Yeah. Where it was 22-24. And I just kind of went to bed after that one. I'm like, they're going to need this kicker. They're not going to win. The next thing you know, I wake up the next morning and come to find out that punt or drop kick used just didn't help out at all. I mean, it has to go to the side. The side is in the name. It just can't go straight up and into the arms of a waiting Cowboys player.
I mean, it went 30 or 40 yards before it even came down. So there's nobody from your team going 30 or 40 yards to get that ball.
Yeah. And lastly, the Colts and the Texans. I was so excited, but I will tell you this. I will tell all the viewers this and listeners. I hate the Tampa 2 defense with a burning passion. And I was getting nervous in the fourth quarter because all they were doing is running it right where our guys were, crossing routes and halfback screens. And I'm going, and I was at my own birthday party with my cousin and my grandma. We all had a same birthday party that day. And here I am in the back doing a freaking Jim Harbaugh, bending down with my glasses down like this, just like, come on, you can do this. Don't do this. And I'm just in the back. I'm going like, not the dreaded Tampa 2. I hate the Tampa 2.
What do you expect when you're up 21-0 going into the fourth quarters?
I know, but I was just happy though because we finally won a playoff game in 3 years. And
yeah, it's been a while.
Team, and I was just saying to myself, I'm like, look, I'm just glad we made it into the playoffs. I'm like, because this year I'm like, if we make it to the championship game or the Super Bowl, I'm like, I'll be ecstatic. But if we lose to the Chiefs, I'd say this is a pretty successful season compared to last year, heck, even the past 2 years. But the way that the Colts offense operated, just in the first quarter alone, was just slow down the pace because you know how the Texans like to keep an up-tempo offense and just control the clock. Because I love what Frank Reich is doing and the offensive coordinator in just turning the clock into the 12th player essentially on the field, just making sure that they don't have enough time to do anything. And I think if they keep doing that and they keep Patrick Mahomes on the sideline throughout that game as long as they can, the Colts can win it. So, Derek, what was your opinion on this? Because I've sidetracked numerous times back and forth.
So, in my opinion, the top 4 teams, the best 4 teams in those games won. The Colts obviously were the best team against the Texans. Colts dominated on both sides of the offense and defensive line. And then the Dallas and Seahawks game, Dallas was obviously the better team. They dominated up front. They kept Seattle from doing what they do best, which is run the football. And then the Chargers, again, we kept saying the same thing. They planned to keep Lamar Jackson from using his feet to kill them. And ultimately, they succeeded in that first 3 quarters, which is all that they needed. And then the Eagles, they're a better team overall. I mean, you said it, Josh, that the Chicago Bears offense did not get it going. That was the biggest question mark we had, was that can the Bears get enough offense going to supplement their defense? They couldn't get anything going. And unfortunately, I mean, because Nick Foles has a different kind of offensive scheme to him compared to Carson Wentz. And that's also one of the many reasons Nick Foles is able to do so well, because at the end of the year, he is comes in at the end of the year. There's no film on him. They don't know really what they're doing. And it's a lot of those quick check down moves. And I do think Alshon Jeffrey, being his first game back in Chicago since being traded, I think that that was kind of a revenge game for him. And I think that he really wanted to show out for Chicago fans that doubted him. But anyway, we'll skip on from that. Now we are going to go to the Indianapolis Colts and their 21-7 win over the Texans last week. Josh, we'll start with you. What was your take on that game?
All right. Well, stated earlier that the first quarter was by far the best first quarter of the season we've ever had, at least in my opinion, because we showed that we can just march down the field. JJ Watt, he's just like another person we could just swat off, Andrew Luck, make sure nobody touches him, and just, like I said, use the class as the 12th man on the field. Let's see. What else? There was also the defense I was surprised about. With Deshaun Watson is essentially the same player type as Lamar Jackson, but he knows how to throw it. Where I was happy with, I believe, our defensive line mostly, who was able to at least contain him most of the time and get a sack. I mean, granted, I did see a little bit of a face mask on one of the sacks.
Yeah, I did see that too.
But we're not going to talk about that.
Yeah, we won't talk about it.
No. But the first interception, I thought that was like the best read I could have ever seen the defense do. I mean, they just pretended they were going to head back, and then when the tight end from the Texans cuts across, our cornerback just jumps right back out and snags the football away from him. And that's what a dominant defense should do. Now, I know I'm rambling because I covered most of it in the first part of it, but all in all, the whole game, we should have won that game. We won that game, and now it's off to Kansas City. Derek, what do you got that I missed?
Well, I think, again, you touched on it again. The offense and defensive lines were insane. I mean, the best quarterback that weekend was Andrew Luck. He played the best of all the quarterbacks. It looked dominant as usual. That offensive line, once again, was able to stun Jadeveon Clowney, J.J. Watt, and these other boys. And I don't know if you saw the clip, Quentin Nelson laying out Jadeveon Clowney, because that was all over SportsCenter the last week. That was a dang good block. I love it so much. Again, it just shows the new attitude that this O-line has. It's absolutely insane. Marlon Mack having a career day. It's actually the most rushing yards of any Colts player in a playoff game.
Big Mac.
And his, obviously, his highest. So, and T.Y. Hilton and those receivers also had a plethora of games. Ebron and Inman both with touchdowns, and then T.Y. Hilton obviously having himself a good game.
Did you see T.Y. Hilton's Wikipedia? They changed it to
I did
College.
see that. Yeah, I did see it. That was a really funny story. We'll have to try and get Toby to bring that up at some point. But yeah, and then the defensive side, I touched on it earlier when I was talking about it before the podcast started. I said how Eberflus was able to do such a great job of disguising schemes and disguising formations, let alone just schemes. I was saying how that interception Darius Leonard had, it went from looking like a man-to-man pass coverage to switching to a zone midway through it. So it's actually really cool that the defense for the Colts is able to confuse quarterbacks with that kind of schemes. And then the one thing I'll end with, the one thing that made me the most mad in that entire game, and I told Josh this earlier, was Deshaun Watson. After his first touchdown in the second half, when they were down 21 donut, you end up you're on the Indianapolis sideline, and then you do a first down marker in front of Ebron and all those boys. I love what Steve Smith said on Good Morning Football the other day. He said, you're down 21-0 and you're doing that. Look, give the ball to the ref, get your ass back in the huddle and go play football. There's no reason to be doing that when you're down 21-0. It shows maturity, and it actually shows, a lot of more to say about Deshaun Watson versus Andrew Luck. But that will be the end of that. And now we're going to go to Toby, who, his Saints didn't have a game last weekend, but I think he wants to tell us a little bit about his upcoming game against the Philadelphia Eagles. It will be the rematch to watch.
Yeah, I mean, the first encounter with the Eagles this season, I mean, it's not going to be the same game that it was in the regular season. I mean, the Eagles 1 touchdown and the Saints getting over 40 points, winning the game with not quite 40 points different at home in the Dome. But yeah, that Eagles team changed a lot during the course of the season, so it's not the same team anymore that the Saints played about 10 weeks ago or even more. So it's going to be quite a different challenge for the Saints this week. The only thing is the Saints are coming off of 2 bye weeks, essentially, with them resting a lot of starters, especially on offense, in that Week 17 game against the Carolina Panthers, which at some points I really like about it because, I mean, the entire offensive line has healed up. Sorry, excuse me. But yeah, I mean, it's the first time since Week 10 when Teron Armstead had his injury that the entire offensive line essentially is back to starting on the field as a unit. Or not starting because against Pittsburgh they started as well, but Teron Armstead went out on the first couple of snaps again because he aggravated his injury. But now that with the 2 weeks rest, or essentially 3 weeks rest since Week 16, the entire offensive line has healed up to a point that they can start again and don't have that many problems with the injuries anymore. And I mean, back in Week 10, that was before that Cowboys game and in that phase where the Saints were just dominating their opponents. They could basically do whatever they wanted. They couldn't lose a game. And for one part, I think it was because of that just elite offensive line that protected Drew Brees and gave him that extra couple tenth of seconds to get the ball accurate to his receivers. And now I hope that they are back to that form from the middle of the season to kind of get Drew Brees back to that comfort level that he had during these, 7 or 8 weeks in the regular season. But we'll see that against the Eagles. But yeah, one other thing during that week, of course, probably a lot of people have already read about that, is Sean Payton brought in a card with the Lombardi Trophy from the 2009 season from Super Bowl 44 with $201,000 in cash on that card. The reason because it was $201 in cash is that $201 would be the bonus for every player on the roster if the Saints win the Super Bowl, and it would be first of all a $29,000 bonus for the divisional playoffs, for $54,000 bonus for the conference championship, and $118,000 bonus for winning the Super Bowl, which for a lot of guys on that roster is a big amount of money and probably 50% or even more off their current contract. So, I mean, that's the way that Sean Payton is motivating the team. And, I mean, he came in there with just that one message. Just win 3 more games. And yeah, that's essentially it. And, I mean, the toughest opponent in my eyes was eliminated last week with the Chicago Bears. I was really worried about the Chicago Bears in the playoffs because, I mean, with that front seven that they have with Akeem Hicks and Marlon Mack in there, or Khalil Mack, sorry, not Marlon Mack. I mean, even with the offensive line that the Saints have, they are going to bring the pressure on Drew Brees, and Drew Brees didn't really look that comfortable if he got the pressure on him during this season. So I was really worried about the Bears. Now that the Bears are gone, I'm a little more comfortable because I think, of course, we can beat the Eagles. We've done it before. We can beat the Rams. We've done it before. And the only team that we couldn't beat in the regular season is the Cowboys, but that was in Dallas. If they would come back for the conference championship, it's in the Dome in New Orleans. So, and it's a different team the Saints are with the entire offensive line starting again. So yeah. I think all 3 teams in the NFC can be beaten by the Saints right now. So I'm really happy with that. And I said I'm not only positive on the 2 weeks of rest for the Saints because recent history shows that the Saints are kind of slacking after a bye week or a week off. They don't have the greatest games after bye weeks because they kind of get out of the flow. And the Saints feel like a team that needs the flow, that kind of needs to stay in the rhythm with the games each week. I hope it's not this year. I mean, during the regular season, it looked pretty good. After that bye week, they came back stronger than they were before, which was kind of unusual, and I didn't expect it. But I mean, if they come back stronger right now, I would take it in the playoffs, of course, and I hope they can make a playoff run. Because, like I said, all three other teams are beatable right now.
Yep, and I'm hoping for it too, Toby. Like I said, we're rooting for the Colts-Saints rematch in the Super Bowl. All right, so now we're going to move on. Yeah.
I was going to just say, sorry, really quick. Did that $201, was that the leftover money from Bounty Gate? Just asking.
Again, we're going back to that one. Rub it in for Toby.
Well, I'm a salty Colts fan. They're the New Orleans Saints. I despise them.
Yeah, we know. No. We'll talk about that a little bit more as time goes along here. But anyway, now we're going to move on to the news around the NFL, and we're going to talk about the coaching hires. Obviously, we talked about it last week. 8 different head coaches were fired during that week, so 8 different head coaching vacancies needed to be filled. So far, 5 of them have been filled, or 4 have been officially filled. 1 or 2 are unofficial right now, but are expected to happen. The Dolphins are hoping to hire Brian Foles, the linebacker coach from the Patriots, once the season is over. The Buccaneers have hired Bruce Arians, gotten him out of retirement, and have named Todd Bowles, the former head coach for the Jets, as their defensive coordinator. The Jets have hired former head coach of the Dolphins, Adam Gase. The Browns have hired Freddie Kitchens, who was their offensive coordinator, and obviously fired Greg Williams and a couple of other coaches along the way. And the Cardinals have gotten the former Texas Tech head coach as well. And I want to know from you guys, and we'll start with Toby, what were your overall thoughts on this week on coaches being hired? Was there any good or bad ones? Were there any surprising ones? Did somebody really do good or bad with the coaching hires?
First off, I love the pickup by the Jets with Adam Gase, because he is the guy that a young quarterback needs. And I mean, he brought the Dolphins to a winning record with Ryan Tannehill as their head coach. So I believe he can do wonders with Sam Darnold in New York there. He's the guy that Sam Darnold needs, and he's the guy that can turn that team around. And he has the money to spend for other talent to surround Sam Darnold with.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good pickup. Then, of course, you got Tampa Bay that got Bruce Arians. And, I mean, I've seen the Bucs a lot with the Saints in the same division. So I had the Bucs really high for the last 2 years. They had a lot of talent on their team. They should have performed better. I believe it was the coaching. So I think with Bruce Arians, who has the experience in the NFL and who is a really good head coach, that he can turn that team around. Excuse me. And of course, that Browns pickup. First off, thank you, Browns, for firing Greg Williams. Nobody wants to see this guy in the NFL anymore. And he has a good relationship with Baker Mayfield, which is really important with Baker Mayfield and his personality. So for me, these 3 pickups are the best ones. I don't quite understand the Cliff Kingsbury hire in Arizona, but yeah, we'll have to see.
Yeah. All right, Josh, what were some of the reactions from you for these hires?
I guess the biggest one for me was the Freddie Kitchens one, because that one was always up in the air beforehand. And gosh, that threw me off. I just, like Toby said, yeah, the All right, hold on. Okay.
Yeah, obviously his relationship with
Yeah.
Baker Mayfield does play a part in why he was hired.
Yeah, and from what I heard from Chase, the biggest Browns fan I know next to my dad and my cousin, said that not Jimmy Haslam, John Dorsey actually sat down with a few of the candidates, like Fred Kitchens, I think you said Sarkeesian or something like that, Sarskian, and one other person, I think it was McCarthy, and he just liked Freddie Kitchens a lot better because he was actually a part of the team and actually understood the players in Baker Mayfield. And that's probably like the biggest one because, like I said, the coaches there are always a revolving door for the Browns. I mean, Mike Pettin into Hugh Jackson, and then Hugh Jackson into Greg Williams, and then Greg Williams into Freddie Kitchens. So hopefully the carousel for the Browns stops once and for all,
Right.
And I think it will here. So that's why I think that was the biggest one in my opinion. But the one that didn't make sense to me was, again, like what Toby said with the Arizona one, Steve Wilkes. You can't do that to a guy. You can't just say, well, screw him.
That's something that I did not necessarily like.
That's why I keep saying, I'm like, the coaches are like, the team should have something for the coaches where they get a 2-year grace period just in case that something doesn't work out their first season. They can make improvements and not worry about their job. But no, you fire him. Next thing you know, there's bad press about having minority head coaches in the NFL, and the NFL is just like, well, crud. What do we do about this?
Right.
And that's why that one still doesn't make any sense to me, to get rid of Steve Wilkes like that. I mean,
right.
That was dirty on the Arizona Cardinals' part.
Yeah, and what else you got?
That's pretty much about the biggest ones that surprised me, And just like how Toby said before, the head coach of the new head coach, Kingsbury, was going to go for Kyler Murray if they came across him and were to hire him.
Yeah, he can throw that direction to them, but I mean, I don't necessarily think that's going to happen with the organization.
Yeah,
probably not.
However, though, I think the prospect of trading Josh Rosen could take into effect here soon.
You could, but the problem is that so many teams, there's so few teams that need a quarterback right now that they don't think they need one. It's almost at a point where why would we pick a second-year quarterback and a guy that, still obviously has a lot of rust, still needs to get into shape.
And the thing that drives me crazy about these things, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people are talking about this in other platforms, why are they going for Sean McVay types? I mean,
they've been talking about that a lot.
It's driving me crazy. I mean, I'd rather have experience, though. But then again, I guess.
Well, I can tell you why, because Sean McVay has been to relate with his players. He's so young and he's so good of a leader that he relates with his players so well. That's something that not a lot of coaches can really do. And not to mention, he does a very good job of writing a good offensive scheme. I mean, it's not just his scheming that makes him a great coach. Again, it's the young guys that are almost pretty much the same age as these other guys. And it for some reason just kind of makes a lot of these players think, oh, I can relate to this guy because, I was in his position at one point.
Yeah.
But anyway, going back to the coaches that were hired this week, I think the Buccaneers struck a gold mine with Bruce Arians and Todd Bowles. I think that was an A hire. I think Bruce Arians is a very underrated coach by a lot of people, and I think it's great to see him back out of retirement because I think he was a great coach that never really got never got quite enough credit for what he's been able to do with his organizations. And adding Todd Bowles, who I think is a very underrated coach as well, I think that he's good with sticking to just one side. I think, one thing that you could always say with the Jets is they were most of the time a pretty good they were mostly a pretty good defensive team. And I think those were very good ones. And then the Jets with Adam Gase, yeah, I believe the same thing. I think that Adam Gase is a very good quarterback for Sam Darnold. I think that he definitely would bring out the best in him. And I'll agree the same way with the Cardinals. I don't like what they did with Steve Wilks. I think that you need to have a standard where you give a guy a couple years to figure out what's going to happen, because you can't judge a coach off 1 year, especially with that roster. That was not a good roster. It was not a good team. So why fire the guy when he didn't really have much to begin with? That's my issue with that. And then giving Kingsbury that job, I mean, he didn't accomplish anything in Texas Tech. Why would you think he'd be successful in Arizona? I just don't understand that concept. And unlike you guys, I really don't like the Freddie Kitchens hire by the Browns. I saw a stat that said that the last 20 head coaches that were from in-house teams, only 4 of them have gone on to actually like coach for an extended period of time. The other 16 have pretty much gone either been gone in a year or two. I mean, that's just how it becomes. It's not a lot of times is a coordinator from that team usually the best option. But again, if the Browns think it's the best option, we'll just have to see if John Dorsey's right on this one. I mean, John Dorsey hasn't been wrong yet, so we'll have to see.
And really quick about Steve Wilks, this is just coming from Ian Rappaport's Twitter. So the Browns are working on a deal to hire former Arizona head coach Steve Wilks as their defensive coordinator.
Would make sense.
Well, that could be something. I think that probably could be something. I think that Steve Wilks deserves the benefit of the doubt. I know he didn't do a great job his first year as a head coach, but head coaching is not easy in the NFL, especially when you don't have a great roster.
Yeah.
But anyway, so now since you guys talked about Kyler Murray and Kingsbury with the head coach, we're going to actually talk about Kyler Murray, who just this week, it's being reported. Now, it's not official just yet, but it's what's being brought out, that Kyler Murray is expected to opt out of his contract with the A's and enter into the NFL draft, where many people believe he will be the first or second quarterback taken, most likely in the first round. We know that this class is not very big on quarterbacks this year. It's going to be a lot more other stuff. But Josh, we'll start with you. Do you think that Kyler Murray is making the right choice to go to the NFL? And if he is to you, where do you think he lands in the NFL draft?
All right. So I think he should not opt out of that A's deal. And here's why. You're going to have more success in the MLB and you're going to make a lot more money. Now, that's not to say that he's just in it for the money or, something like that, some ridiculous. But in all honesty, I'd say if you really could, I'd say just stay in the MLB where you know that you can have a longer lifetime instead of like if you get a career injury in the NFL and you go, well, I can't play football anymore. I'll go back to baseball. Who's to say they're going to take you back? And I'd say that the safer bet for a long-term career would be the MLB. But let's say he does opt out of it. I mean, it's still up in the air if he is or not. I could actually just see him just going first overall to the Cardinals like they want. And then midway through the draft, trade Rosen to like the Jags for their first or second overall or first round pick or their second round pick. And I think that it's going to go Kyler Murray, number 1, and then Dwayne Haskins, number 5 to the Giants. That's how I see it for the top 2 quarterbacks.
Okay, so you're basically saying that you don't think Kyler Murray should opt out of that contract with the A's.
Yeah.
Okay, Toby, you disagree or agree with that?
Well, I'm kind of split on it. I can see the opinion Josh has, and from an injury standpoint, of course, the MLB is the safer bet than the NFL is. But with the way that the rules have changed on how defenders can sack a quarterback and can tackle a quarterback, it has changed a little bit. So the NFL is safer for a quarterback now as well. But he also released a statement this week where he says that the NFL is just the better option for his family. And I can see that because the MLB season is longer. They have more games, so he wouldn't be home that much and wouldn't see his family that much. With the NFL, he has, at most, he has 20 games in a season. Of course, you got the training camp and preseason as well, but you spend a lot more time, or have a lot more time to spend with your family and stuff. So I believe in that regard, the NFL is a better option for him. And money-wise, I mean, if you're a first-round pick, you're getting enough money in the NFL as well. Of course, the MLB has the higher salary cap, and MLB players get the bigger contracts. It's guaranteed and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, but, I mean, if you're good at both, look at Russell Wilson. He's playing football as his job, and then he's at the spring training with, I think this year he's with the Yankees again. So there's always the two-way street where he can still keep the MLB path open if there would be something that wouldn't work out with the NFL. It doesn't have to be a career-ending injury in the NFL. If he doesn't perform, he can still go to the MLB after 2 seasons. He might not get the big contract at first that he would have gotten with the A's now that he was drafted with them. But, I mean, that door is still open.
Yeah, and yeah, it's so hard to really decide on this because obviously we're not all trying to say what he should do. Only he can decide what's best for him, what's best for his family and everything. And I mean, you're completely right, Toby. The football, he can be home a lot more often. He has a lot more freedom to be home and stick close, and the season is not quite as long, and obviously doesn't have as many games. But Josh is also right. It's the money can be a lot greater, hence he actually performs. And obviously you stick around and stay healthy for a lot longer. For a guy like his size and his stature, I mean, we can admit he's an amazing athlete. That's why the A's wanted to get him, because he's an amazing athlete. He's a pretty decent baseball player, and that's why the A's wanted to give him a contract. I'd say just because of the simple fact that the A's say they want him right now, that I would stick with that MLB contract because you know it's guaranteed. You know where your future's going with that. But you don't know what's going on with the NFL. You don't know where you're going to. And again, I always think back to what Josh said. It's so difficult to see a guy that's 5'10" and about 190 pounds running around out there and just takes one hit from a guy that's 100 pounds heavier than him. I mean, he's just so small, and he's just like Johnny Manziel in that aspect. So athletic, can make plays wherever you do. I mean, I would tell him to stay in the MLB, hence if he decided to, but again, only he can decide that one. And I mean, it's pretty much up in the air at this point because it looks like he's going to the NFL. But if I were him, I would say just stick with the MLB contract until you know something different's going to happen.
Yeah. So Derek, the other question is, do you think Kyler Murray will be the first quarterback off the board in the draft if he's going to the NFL?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that everyone kind of sees Dwayne Haskins as the better overall QB prospect here, because I know Kyler Murray's more athletic. I get that. But I mean, Dwayne has a better arm. He's got better mechanics. I mean, obviously he has to fine tune a couple of things. Obviously he's not the best prospect that ever walked through, but if you're talking about the most NFL ready quarterback right now, Dwayne Haskins is the most important one right now. So I would go with Dwayne Haskins as the first quarterback taken in the NFL draft.
You know, I want to just add something really quick, Derek.
Yep.
There's two things I want to add. You said it right, though. Athlete. How good do athletes do in the NFL? Not that good.
I mean, it depends, and especially as a quarterback. I mean, Lamar kind of thriving in it a little bit.
I mean,
but
look at Russell Wilson. I would actually compare him to Russell Wilson right now.
Yeah,
Russell Wilson is not the biggest guy as well. He has the baseball background. He's the athletic guy that runs around. So
he's just more of a. I say he even in college he was more of a general on the field. He didn't run as much as Kyler Murray does. I mean, that's just what concerns me.
Yeah, and I think you're right though, because Dwayne Haskins, boy, this year did he make it look easy.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you're right though. He's got everything a quarterback has, but he just needs to fine tune. He needs to speed up a little bit.
Yeah, and that's the point. I mean, you can put him in a QB room for a year. You don't even need to start him right away, but of course they probably will because whatever team gets him. But he's that guy that if you sit him in the room a little bit, get him caught up to speed with a couple of these other NFL guys, I'm sure he's got the rocket arm. He's got decent accuracy. He's very good at being able to get the ball out and is very good he's not super great with his reads. He's got to get a little faster with that. And of course that gets better as time goes along because you catch up to game speed. But overall, it's kind of the same argument we had with Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold, who was the better QB prospect. But I think that this time around, I think that, Baker's off the field and on the field antics kind of overshadowed his actual playmaking ability.
Yeah.
But I think that Dwayne Haskins is the more prototypical NFL type quarterback.
Yeah. And I got actually one more hypothetical question for you guys concerning Kyler Murray. If you guys are sitting in the Arizona Cardinals war room, second day of the draft, you got the 33rd pick in the draft, and Kyler Murray is still on the board, do you take him?
That is a tough one because I mean, I think Josh Rosen has a competitive fire to him. I do. It just depends on, because whatever quarterback you got right there in that organization, I don't really think it matters to them. They have so little talent everywhere else on that board that they really have no competition right now anyways. I think if you put Kyler Murray out there right now, he might win them a game or two more, but I mean, it really doesn't save their season either way. I mean, that's kind of a tough question for me. I think if I had to take a shot in the dark, if I'm just saying I'm going right now, would I rather trust Josh Rosen or Kyler Murray down the road? I will pick Kyler Murray. I will. I think that Kyler Murray is a little better of a quarterback than Josh Rosen. I think he has better playmaking ability. But right now, I'm just not 100% sure.
So if I'm in the Cardinals war room and I got the second round pick, I'd actually skip out on Kyler Murray. And here's why. That defense last year was pretty bad for the Cardinals. So I'd say that they should stick to the number, like what they are doing. And let's say if they did, they drafted Nick Bosa first overall.
Yeah.
I'd say you get like a linebacker or a cornerback, because I'd actually ride out with Josh Rosen, see what he's got, because his head coach just left him. His first year head coach just got fired. So depending on how well Kingsbury does, he could be the ride or die guy. But I can also see where you're coming from too, because Rosen still has a lot to learn. Yeah. And I think that if Kingsbury works his magic this year with Josh Rosen and actually keeps him on the team and not trade him like the Jags for their first pick in the draft, then I think he'd be fine. But having a 5'10" quarterback in an NFL with linemen who average about 6'4", who can just jump up and slam it down like a little kid shooting a basketball hoop and say, "Not in my house."
Yeah.
I think his height is going to be I'm going to be one of those people that are haters because of his height. And I mean, know
because
there's other people out there.
It's prototypical. I mean, it's why there's not a lot of guys that are that kind of height. I mean, Russell Wilson obviously is able to get past that because he's very smart. He knows how to deal with things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's arguments for both ways on that, Toby.
Yeah, that's true. To be honest, I actually would give Kyler Murray a shot in the second round personally, but I would actually not would not have him as the starter in week 1 on the team. I would keep both the quarterbacks on the roster with
Rosen.
With Rosen, yeah, same. Thanks for that. And Murray. So you're gonna try with Rosen and Kingsbury, the combination there, and if that doesn't work out, you still have Kyler Murray in there. So both wouldn't have the big contract that would put your cap space into jeopardy, but you could still have the option to kind of switch the two out if it doesn't work out.
Yeah.
Right. All right. I think we've gone enough of that with the NFL news. Now we're going to end this podcast with the divisional round NFL playoff predictions for this weekend. So we're going to go the first game. Obviously, the first game this week is 4:35 Saturday. The Indianapolis Colts at Arrowhead Stadium. Toby, we're going to start with you. Who do you got?
Well, I've said it in my recap for last week, and that the Colts are, for me, the best team in the AFC right now. So I'm going with the Colts, and the reason why is, like I said, they are just looking hot right now. The last, I don't know how many weeks for now, they just got better and better on about every position there is on the field. And Kansas City was, about the opposite of it. They kind of declined as the season went along. And if you're looking at the regular season games that Kansas City played against playoff teams, there was only one game that they won. That was the game in the first couple of weeks at StubHub Center against the LA Chargers. And at that point of the season, the Chargers were in the real playoff team. They kind of just got better at the later stage of the season. So basically, if you're looking at the real playoff caliber teams, Kansas City lost every game, and I don't think this week will be any different at home.
Yeah. Josh, what you got?
Well, the Colts are 4-0 against the Chiefs in the playoffs. Remember that time that they blew that lead in the
29-point comeback. Yes.
Yep.
Happened just recently.
I'm telling you this is probably like the best Colts team in quite a while. And I'm sticking with my boys in blue. Let's go with the Colts in this one. And they're going to show why Andrew Luck is more of an MVP than Patrick Mahomes.
I agree. I think I'm going with the teams that are better overall when it comes to their rosters. Again, it's better to be good late than be good early. And these teams are the perfect identity of that. Chiefs were really good the first 10 weeks of the season, then started to drop off in their last 6 because they haven't been able to run the football very well. Hence, we know why. The Colts have gotten much, much better in every facet of the game. They're going to be able to run the ball against a struggling rush defense against Kansas City. And I think with the weather the way it's going to be, if the Colts stay healthy, which I believe they are, only 2 are ruled out right now, which are not very important. But as long as we have everybody else playing, I do believe we will go in and win this game at Arrowhead. So I will pick the Colts. And then the next game, the Saturday night football game, which is the Dallas Cowboys going to LA to face the Rams. Toby, what you got?
Yeah, that was a game that is really difficult to pick for me because, the Rams are the favorite in this game right now, but for me, if I'm looking at Dallas right now, they have a really strong rush defense, and that's one of the key parts of the LA game plan to run the ball with Todd Gurley. And that's going to be difficult to do against the Cowboys. So that's one part of the game for the Rams that is kind of going out the window probably. And another thing is the aggressiveness that the LA Rams defense has on their pass rush, which is often called for penalties on offense. And I'm looking at the officiating crews. They have an officiating crew that is calling for the most offensive, for the most defensive line penalties in the game for this season. So I'm looking at quite a lot of penalties for the LA Rams defense. And for me, that is why I'm giving a kind of narrow win to the Dallas Cowboys. All right, Josh, what you got?
Yeah, this one was kind of hard for me too, because I want to ride with the Cowboys, but the Rams defense, though, is looking okay. But then again, you look, it's a battle of Dak versus Goff, Zeke versus, Gurley, and then McVay against Garrett. So it's going to be pretty tough. So I'm going to keep riding with the Cowboys because the Rams defense has had some spotty coverage in the backfield where I think Dak could get to Amari Cooper a lot easier than what Goff can get to, Gurley or something like that.
Yeah, there's two things that the Cowboys do really well and two things that the Rams don't do very well. One is they don't cover, they don't rush, their run defense is really bad. And that's one thing the Cowboys do very well. And one thing that's also been bad lately is that the Rams have not been able to find an efficient pass game. The Cowboys have a top 10 defense, both in passing and in rushing, because they are able to blitz the quarterback and are able to get pressure on a running back because they can get in the backfield. And Goff under pressure is not a very good sign. And from what I'm hearing, even though it's in LA, 50% of the stands are going to be Dallas Cowboys fans. So it is going to be not really a home field advantage for the Rams. And since I have always picked against the Cowboys, and for some reason they love to prove me wrong, I am going with the Cowboys as well this week. I think that the Cowboys will pull the upset against the Rams. And now we're going to go to the Sunday games, where we have the Chargers going into Gillette Stadium to face Bill Belichick, Tom Brady, and the New England Patriots. Toby, who do you have?
Well, I am going with the LA Chargers in this one. I know it's kind of an upset pick right now against New England because New England hasn't been beaten so far in Foxborough this season. But I think this is going to change this year. With the way that New England played, they don't have that quickness, that smoothness that their play had the last couple of seasons. Of course, usually the Patriots get better in the playoffs, but I don't see that happening this year because they are missing the weapons that Tom Brady needs on offense. The only real weapon that they have right now is James White and Sony Michel out of the backfield. But we saw that last week. Running against that Chargers defense and that front seven is really hard to do. Mm-hmm. So just Tom Brady and the wide receivers that he has right now, or Gronkowski, who everybody says if he's healthy, he might be back to the old Gronk that we know. But even in the first couple of weeks this season, Gronk did not look like Gronk at all. So I don't see the targets on offense for the Rams and for the Patriots, and a way too strong defense on the Chargers side. So I'm giving this one to the Chargers.
All right, Josh, what you got?
Oh, let's see. It's at Gillette, right?
Yes.
And the Chargers are playing the Patriots, right?
Yes.
Give me the Patriots.
All right.
Because it's going to be the Colts that beat them in the AFC Championship game to get to the Super Bowl and play the New Orleans Saints for a rematch.
I like that.
That sounds good, yeah.
I'm actually going to go with Toby on this one. I'm liking the Chargers just because I said it before. The Colts have a better roster than the Chiefs do. The Cowboys have a slightly better roster than the Rams do. I'm going with the Chargers just simply because of the roster. I agree. I know that it's in Gillette Stadium, but Toby's right. The defense is going to keep them from making big plays, and even if the weather is bad, the I can guarantee you the Chargers will have a better time running the football than the Patriots will against the Chargers. So I'm going with the Chargers as well. And finally, our last remaining game of the week, which is the Philadelphia Eagles and the New Orleans Saints for the second time this year. Toby, who do you have, even though I'm pretty sure I'm going to guess who you have?
Well, I kind of gave it away about an hour ago in my Saints segment, so of course I'm going with the Saints in this one. I mean, have you watched the regular season game against Philadelphia? You're not just going to lose a 40-point difference in just a couple of weeks between games. The team is in full strength again for the Saints. Philadelphia has some injury problems with no week of rest. So, of course, Nick Foles is starting. And there's actually a pretty awesome fact that probably not many people know about in this game. Actually, Drew Brees and Nick Foles went to the same high school. And this is the third time in NFL history that two quarterbacks from the same high school play against each other in the NFL playoffs, and the first time ever that two Super Bowl MVPs from the same high school play against each other in the NFL playoffs. But this one is going to go to Drew Brees, even with Nick Foles breaking Drew Brees' high school records back in the day. Now it's revenge time for Drew Brees. Not that he actually cares about that, but Saints are going to do it.
Josh, what you got?
Well, how else are the Colts going to beat the Saints in the Super Bowl? Give me the Saints in this one.
Yep, I got the Saints as well. I think even with the Eagles playing very well right now, I think the New Orleans in that stadium, again, it's a different animal. I think the Saints will end up winning. So it looks like the only difference we had this week is Josh picking the Patriots to win against the Chargers. That's the only difference we have this week. But otherwise, that's pretty good there. All right. Well, thanks very much, everyone, to anyone who watches this to watch this podcast. Again, be sure to check out Toby's channel. This will be uploaded here soon. And if you can't watch it on YouTube, be sure to listen to it on Spotify. Always a great thing to listen to if you're ever taking a long road trip. That's what I do all the time. So thanks, Toby. Thanks, Josh, for being here and doing all this.
One last thing.
Yeah.
Thank you, Clemson. Thank you, Clemson.
Yes, thank you, Clemson.
Alabama.
Thank you, Clemson. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you very much.
All right.
That was our last one. And be sure to like and subscribe. All right. So thanks, guys, and we'll see you next week.
See ya.
Peace.